Welcome to this presentation of DBU RDB by ProData. I'd like to thank you for taking the time to allow us to present this information. DBU RDB is available with current updates to DBU 7.0 software. The free trial is the complete software for DBU RDB, but will expire 30 days after installation. You will need IO sysconfig special authority to install the DBU RDB portion of our software. If you have any questions regarding the authority necessary, please contact our technical support team at ProData. DBU RDB uses Java and RPG programming and TCP/IP communications. We'd like to first show you a subsystem that's necessary for DBU RDB to function. The DBU RDB SBS subsystem must be running for DBU RDB to function correctly. This can be viewed by using the Work with Active Jobs screen. Notice there are two jobs beneath the DBU RDB subsystem. One is an administrative job, the other is the worker job. We'll get into the worker job a little later on. First, you must have DBU in your library list. You can use display lib list to see if you have DBU 7.0 in there. If you don't, you'll need to use edit lib list to edit your library list and add DBU 7.0. We recommend adding DBU 7.0 just below the QTemp library list. Now you can see DBU 7.0 is in the user portion just below QTemp in the library list. Now that we have DBU 7.0 in our library list, we can execute the command DBU RDB CFG. Stands for the DBU RDB configuration. The DBU RDB configuration is shipped with the number of RDB jobs as 1. This is that RDB worker job that we just looked at. Turn tracing on refers to the trace log that is kept in the ProData directory, and basically you would use this in conjunction with ProData technical support to troubleshoot any problems you might have in connection. The RDB connect timeout of the ship default is 30 seconds. This refers to the connection timeout when DBU is trying to connect to the remote database. This may need to be increased if the connection time is delayed due to network traffic. Any changes in this configuration will require that the subsystem be ended and restarted, with one exception: the number of RDB jobs. Those are the RDB worker jobs, and what we've done is added a command to our software that allows you to add one worker at a time. If we look at the active subsystem again, and we see one worker job there, if I execute a command DBU RDB ADD, this will add one worker each time it's executed. There are no parameters to pass. You just execute the command from a command line, and then I'll refresh my screen and you'll see that another RDB worker job has been added. One job for each concurrent user that connects to a remote database is required. An example might be that if you have two remote databases and you have plans of two people using RDB to connect at the same time to each, then you would need 4 RDB worker jobs. Now let's go back to the RDB configuration, and we can take a look at how you should configure a connection. F6 allows you to add the configuration. These parameters are all blank. You have to make definitions in here, and what we'd like to do is use an option 5 on the configuration that we already have described. you'll notice that the remote database ID we have is SQL Server. You can call this remote database ID whatever you want to, something that will be familiar to you. The description, again, can be anything that allows you to familiarize yourself with this remote database ID. Database type, that is more specific. You have to use MySQL, Oracle, MS SQL, or DB2. And that's a DB2 database that does not exist on a System I, iSeries, or AS400. We are adding databases as necessary, so if you have the need to use something other than those four, please contact your customer service representative so that we can try to do that for you. The next parameter is the IP address. This refers to the TCP IP address of the remote server. Port number refers to the port number that will be used on the remote server. If you leave port number blank, it will default for MS SQL to 1433 and a default for the other database servers. Catalog service is very important. You may need to check with the remote server's database administrator to determine what to use for the catalog service. The same holds true for the schema. You may need to talk to them to find out what the schema is being used. If this is incorrect, the connection will be refused. So you have to be very precise in naming the TCP IP address, the catalog service, and the schema. Again, port number can be left blank and it will use the default port number. The username must exist on the remote server with the proper authority to the database you are trying to access. Password refers to the password corresponding to that username on the remote server. Once this information has been completed, you can use F3 or F6 to save that information. The F6 key is at the bottom and it equals save. Any changes made to this configuration also has to be saved using the F6 key. Again, we just took an option 1 to update, and you'll notice that the F6 key is something that you'd have to use to save that change that you make. Let's go back to a command line and let's use DBU to access that remote database that you just looked at. So we just use the command DBU use the F4 key to prompt that. We'll put in *all because we want to look at all the tables, and we'll put in that remote database ID that we just saw, SQL SER VER. Once I hit enter, I get a message at the bottom of the screen that it may take up to 75 CPU seconds to access. We'll go down and select customers, and again, it may take up to 75 CPU seconds, but generally speaking it comes up faster because you've just made the connection. This is in single record mode. This is the DBU screen that you're familiar with. If you've already used DBU, you don't have to retrain people about a new screen and the function keys. Function keys down here at the bottom are pretty much all the same as we already used for DBU. So function keys should not be a big issue. Neither should the function of DBU itself. We are now in single record mode. If I do Shift F9 or an F21, I immediately go to a multiple record mode. Here I can use the Shift F8 or the F20 key to window over through the records, and the Shift F7 or the F19 key to window back to the left in the typical IBM configuration. What I'd like to do is show you how to access this from a command line directly. All I do is type DBU RDB, and since I know there's a customer's file out there, I can separate that with a space, and then separate it with space again for the database ID that you've defined. So I immediately go from a command line to the customer's file on the remote database. All the functionality of DBU is available with DBU RDB. We can define a search using Shift F3 or F15. Here we will select the first field, which is the customer ID, and since we know we always have a customer ID, we'll say that it's not equal to a blank. I can then say I want to output those results to a file, and I want to process all the occurrences that meet the criteria of the search. Once I hit enter, I need to define a file to put this in. I'll call this test file, and I'll put that in the QGPL library. That's the general purpose library that's shipped with the IBM operating system. Once I hit enter, I'm notified at the bottom of the screen by a message to verify and press enter, or press F16 to perform the search. I'll press F16 so that we can get the search done. Right now, DBU is reading all the records that qualify that search parameter and writing those records out to a file in our QGPL library called test file. Once that search completes, we'll return to the DBU display and we'll be notified that we are at the bottom of the file by the record number, which is now at the bottom. Now we're going to go all the way back out just so we can access it again. I'll use my F9 key just to bring that back up, the same file, customers in SQL Server. And all of the functionality of DBU is available with DBU RDB. If we would like to add a record, all we have to do is type add in the control field and hit enter. I'm then presented with the ability to add a record. What we'll do is we'll add a record with our information. Any of this functionality that you've been used to with using DBU is available with DBU RDB. Once I hit enter, I get a message that says press enter to add or change the record. If I hit enter, this record has now been added. If I exit back out and go back in, go to the bottom, we'll see that we have now added a record. I've noticed that I missed some information. I can change this record to add that information. All I need to do is in the control field type change, CHG, tab down to the appropriate fields to change, and I can add that information. Once I hit enter, I'm again presented with a message at the bottom of the screen to press enter to change the record. If we exit back out, come back in, and go to the bottom, we'll see that we've now added that information. You can also delete records using DBU RDB. Again, in the control field, just type delete, and you'll see that the mode now says delete. Now, all we have to do is press enter, and we get a message at the bottom of the screen that says press enter to delete the record. Once we press enter, the record has been deleted. If I go back in and go to the bottom of this file, we'll see that that record has now been deleted. We're back to only 91 records. Now, an interesting thing with DBU is the ability to export DDS. Will DBU, the file that we created from the output of DBU RDB, and basically we just defined it as QGPL, and the file name was called test file. Once I execute that, it's now retrieving the file information that's stored in QGPL. If we go to the bottom, we see we have 91 records, just like the other one. In order to export this, all I have to do is an F4, and then at the bottom here, F4 is the list field command that we were in DBU and got to. We see an F9 to export the fields. All I have to do is press F9, and we'll put this in the QDDS source file that's in QGPL. Once I hit enter, we see that the file export completed properly. I can exit back out, exit completely out of DBU, and work with this object using PDM and define it as QDDS SRC. Once I work with that file, we can see that test file has been ordered, and we have all the field descriptions are right there. You can even do this using DBU RDB. You can export those fields to a DDS. What we'll do is we will DBU RDB that same file, customers, and once the DBU display screen is there, we'll use F4 and again F9, and this time we'll call it my test file, and we're going to put that into, or I'm sorry, the source file has to be QDDS SRC, and we're going to put it, that's the one in QGPL, and we'll call this my test file, and we will export that directly from the RDB into the DDS source in QGPL, as noted at the bottom of the screen. Now, if we exit all the way back out to the command line and we execute a work object PDM, again, now we see my test file has been exported, and the file specifications reside in the DDS directly from DBU RDB. The other thing I'd like to show you today is how to create an application basically using DBU RDB. So we'll DBU RDB that same file again, and you might say, you know, I'd like my users to be able to use DBU RDB on a database file on a remote server, and I would also like them only to do specific things. So we use F4 to define this, and we want to select the customer ID, but we want that to be for display only. And we might want to select the company name, contact title. We also may want the phone number there. So what we would want to maybe use something like this for is for someone to be able to make a phone call and be able to verify the customer ID and make changes to the company name, and contact title. Once I type CHG to get into the change mode, which now I'm in the change mode, I can tab through these 4 fields. I cannot change the customer ID field. That is prohibited by display only. So I could have somebody build this and say, great, this is something I want to put on a menu. All I have to do is type APP and hit enter. Once I'm brought up to the DBU applications screen, and all I have to do is do an F6. I can call this today's app. I put in DBU 7.0 for the library. I'll designate it as test application, and the authority I'll leave it at star all. However, you can use exclude and then use the F14 key to be more particular by profile of who you want to give that authority to. So DBU allows you to use a lot of authority on DBU applications. Once I hit enter, the information that was stored about the use of DBU is now being written out to a user space that will be referred to when you access the application. So if I exit out of this screen, I'm back to DBU, and if I exit back to the command line, I can then type DBU app and TUDAYS app for today's app. Immediately, I access the data on the remote server, and I am presented with the information exactly how I designed it. I can only change 4 fields, and I am in a change mode. Most of the functions of DBU are available with DBU RDB, with the exception of DBU GUI. DBU RDB will be available in the next release of DBU GUI, and that's at a date yet to be determined, but we are working on that. Well, this concludes this presentation of DBU RDB. ProData's technical support team is available to answer questions about DBU RDB. Remember, DBU RDB can also be used in conjunction with DBU Audit Journal plugin. This gives you the ability to track any adds, changes, or deletes that you use on your remote database. There's a complete reporting process, and if you have the need for auditors to be able to track adds, changes, and deletes, not only on your iSeries but on remote databases, we believe that DBU RDB is the tool for you. Again, thank you for taking the time to look at the latest feature of what we believe to be the best database tool in the world today. Thank you.